Alright, so in another part of this series, I'm going to talk about the full-time versus part-time people in a survival group that has a retreat, survival group retreat situation, and the dynamic that we would expect to see that's going to lead to success for both the individuals and a retreat. But one thing I'm going to talk about on this is that success may not necessarily mean keeping the thing together. But I'm going to go into that some more. John Wesley Rawls, in his book Patriots Surviving the Coming Collapse, it was a little dated. It's actually been redated a couple of times as far as the collapse. I think it was based on economic collapse. There was a point when the main survival group in the book decides to split up and abandon the retreat, and that's still considered a positive thing. The retreat location was under constant attack. I think there was a comparison with another survival group or retreat called the Templars that decided to stick it out and stick together, and they came under mortar attack and most of them were killed. And the protagonists of the main story in John Wesley Rawls' Patriots was that there was a point when they said, listen, we've survived this stage of the collapse. We need to split up and move on and survive the next stage of the collapse. And in that, I look at that and I look at some of the people that have been part of a commune, especially on the 70s and 80s to early 80s. Most of the commune movement started to kind of close down by the mid-80s. They still considered it a successful part of their life, and some of them are revisiting the prepper survivalist movement at this stage in the game, saying, oh, well, that's what we did back in the 70s. That's what we did when we moved from Ohio or Indiana or Michigan. When we first went to California, we did that. But at this stage of the game, they're baby boomers, they're upper middle class, they own multiple pieces of real estate, and they have no feeling of a need to have other people to share with or do things with or that. Most of them don't. They have their own family, or they have their own dependents, or they have their own retirement home. They don't have any need for anyone else. Others have gotten so far along in what they feel is their prepper, their sustainability situation, they don't really need anybody. And what I've seen on that, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. Other times, they're so set in their ways, just like a lot of older people are, you're not going to convince them of anything. So when we look at the success of individuals versus success of a survival retreat situation, sometimes it's sustainability. Other times, it says, okay, everybody's moved up to this level, and we're ready to take another group. There's already a little bit of a split-off dynamic happening. We're going to split that off, and we're going to establish another location with you people, and we're going to help support that location until we get that one up and going, and we're going to make more and more and more, and we're going to copy that around. One of the groups and one of the things that I haven't talked about in earlier videos, I really didn't want to bring up until we get into some of the later videos, is one that's located here in Portland, Oregon, called Dignity Village. It was established by homeless people, or for homeless people, plus a small group of activists. Now, in my research on this organization and the group, I was looking at it from a couple of different angles. One, it was after my academic period, after so it was mainly for personal education, and I saw a lot of what they had done that I think we can use in the survivalist group retreat type thing. There's a lot of things I saw them doing that I think can work with other people. Now, at Dignity Village, it was set up as a homeless camp in Portland, Oregon. And a lot of the people, it was never clear whether it was most of the people or a lot of people, but apparently there was a significant number of ex-convict sex offenders involved with Dignity Village that were living there for whatever reason. They had a criminal record that caused them to be unlikely to receive normal housing, even normal government subsidized housing, because a lot of times they had these keep-away orders that children couldn't be around them. And so that caused Dignity Village to have to develop in a couple of locations that were unlikely to have children around. And that was where I got to see something very worthy of study, which was how could they set up when they are under restricted contact with the outside world, restricted resources, and a general social and government hostility toward a lot of the people there that you're not going to see openly mentioned in a lot of the debates about them. But at Dignity Village, what they've been able to do is also transition between the full-time people and the part-time people. They're so sensitive about the past of some of their foundation on that, they don't want to talk on camera, they don't want to do interviews. I actually did camera footage there. I've been to some of their leadership meetings, and I tried to explain what I was there for. I was doing a project. I'm doing a project that it would be eventually become part of my YouTube channel. And at that point, they were having a video conference with one of their consultants, who I believe was in out of the country. He was a Canadian guy, and a Canadian guy was an academic. I recognize that pretty quickly. And they said, listen, you can sit in on the rest of the meeting, but you need to stop filming, and we can't give permission for release of the film until after our own documentary's been published. Their own documentary is yet to be published, but there's a company back east that's doing it, and they're discussing a lot of their group dynamic. So without naming names and without going into any photo or video of their location, you can look up a website and see some basic stuff, and you can find it on Google Earth, and you could find that what they have is what started out as a homeless camp became a collection of sheds and now is actually a village. It's located on the edge of some government land, technically in Portland, Oregon, but it's near an airport, so it looks like a rural area. If you were to see pictures of it around, there's a lot of wide open space because it's near an airport. It's not, actually not in farmland, but a lot of people have gotten involved with it, and they have an open door policy where the sex offender record, a criminal record type situation is not a disqualifier. So they take a lot of people off the street. They take a lot of lower end people. They take a lot of people with problems who are in need of government services of one kind or another. And they put them into a mix, and it requires a very delicate management style on the part of their leadership. And the leadership, for the most part, is a mix of elected and appointed people within the group and the location. They also have some really kind of restrictions on how much wealth you would have. So what happens is a lot of people, as they've been through whatever issue they've been through, they get to Dignity Village, they kind of come up a little bit in the world, they are probably going to move on. One of the points of contention between the on-site leadership and the off-site management is that the on-site leadership people are not trying very hard to create copies of the thing elsewhere, but a lot of the people on their own have tried. A lot of times you get a group of 4 or 5 people, they're unhappy with the situation, the rules are very stringent, the rules are basically based on somebody being on felony probation permanently at that place. And so there is a certain control of a refugee camp atmosphere there, similar in some ways to the, oh gosh, it's some little tent city thing they have downtown. Right to Dream 2, I think is what it's called. And I did a separate video on them, I think a couple of years ago. I just haven't gotten around to doing a follow-up there. So what happens is, if somebody does make a spin-off, it tends to be kind of different. For example, a lot of the people don't like some of the other people that were there, so when they make a spin-off organization or a spin-off location, they may or may not be friendly to the parent location. They may not be friendly to the parent organization. And that's one of the things that I got the impression that some of their consultant, higher-level people, the guy on the other side of the video conference is kind of bringing with them. Now, for the survivalist prepper, you probably wouldn't be particularly welcome there unless you were to really do a lot to change your outlook on life and have a very high tolerance for some kind of different people. Okay, you would have to have a high tolerance for street people, basically. You would have to have a very high tolerance for street people, and that's refugee camp life. Okay, modern refugee camp life, where you'd have to have a high tolerance for that. There were also some rules that looked to me like they were made to be broken, and I won't discuss that in another video. Well, maybe I will, but I don't want to badmouth them because they're trying really hard and they're doing what they're doing. Now, yeah.